Honestly, my gut reaction is always like, wait, shouldn't I be happy first? You know?
Yeah, I get that.
But that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. Get ready.
I'm excited to dig in. And you're spot on. It's not about ignoring your own happiness. It's more like exploring how focusing outward, how connecting with others,
Mm.
that might actually be the key to feeling truly fulfilled.
Okay, see, that's already blowing my mind a little
Okay.
because the text lays out this whole 3 levels of happiness thing. And
Yeah.
I got to admit, it's kind of a trip.
It is.
So level 1, this is where I think a lot of us live, right?
Right.
We're chasing that promotion or like the newest gadget or, that picture-perfect relationship.
It's all about you.
It's all about prioritizing personal happiness. Or like the text shortens it to PPH.
Exactly. And think about it. Remember that time you were gunning for that promotion at work? How much time did you spend imagining that celebratory dinner, everyone congratulating you, that feeling of, I did it, that boost to your self-image?
Oh, yes. Guilty as charged.
That's us, chasing of judgment, emotion, situation, and self-image. We crave everything to align perfectly for us to feel good.
Okay, I'm definitely going to need to hear more about this JICE concept later on.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely circle back to that.
But for now, back to those levels. So level 1, that's all about chasing those external things, those achievements. But the text says that kind of happiness, it's kind of fleeting, right?
Yeah, it's like, remember that feeling taking the first bite of your favorite dessert? Incredible for a second, right?
It's the absolute best.
But then it fades. You want more, but that initial magic is gone. It's the same with chasing those external highs.
Okay, I can see that. So then where does level 2 fit in?
Level 2 is where things get interesting. It's less about chasing highs and more about finding this kind of inner peace that doesn't depend on getting external validation.
So less about forcing a constant grin and more about finding like a deep down okayness,
Yeah.
even when things aren't perfect.
Exactly. It's about accepting that life,
Yeah.
ups and downs,
Yeah,
and that we can be content even when things aren't going exactly how we planned.
I like that. Finding contentment even in the chaos.
The sense of peace and clarity that comes from within, not from external. So it's like tapping into this wellspring of contentment that's always there, regardless of what's happening around us.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Sign me up.
Mm.
But then we get to level 3, wishing happiness on others. And honestly, this is where my brain starts to short circuit a little bit. Because if I'm being honest with myself, if I haven't even mastered being content myself, how can I genuinely want that for someone else,
Oh, you hit on a crucial point there. You absolutely can't just skip ahead to level 3 without first cultivating that level 2 equanimity.
So it's like trying to build a house starting with the roof. It doesn't quite work that way.
Exactly. If you try to jump straight to wishing others well, without first addressing your own internal state, without cultivating that inner peace, it's going to feel forced, maybe even a bit resentful, like you're sacrificing something.
And that defeats the whole purpose.
Exactly. So it really is about finding that balance, not denying your own needs, but recognizing that maybe, just maybe, true fulfillment lies in something bigger than just ourselves.
Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this. So how do we actually start to shift our perspective? How do we go from me first to this more expansive view of happiness?
Well, that's where the text gets really interesting. It introduces this framework called the CERT cycle to help us understand how we react to life's ups and downs.
Okay, CERT cycle. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So SERT. It stands for Start, Experience, Resolution, Timeless.
All right, break that down for me. How does this CERT cycle actually work?
Think of it like the changing seasons, or even just like that feeling of when you set a goal and you're working towards it and then you finally reach that point of completion.
Okay, so it's like a natural rhythm, a cycle.
Exactly. It's a natural rhythm of life.
I like it. So walk me through it. What happens in this CERT cycle?
So you start with the start phase, right? Just like springtime.
Makes sense. New beginnings, fresh start.
Exactly. All about fresh starts, new intentions, feeling motivated. Remember that whole Jesse thing we were talking about?
With the judgment and the self-image and all that?
Yeah. This is where we're chasing that hard.
Yeah.
Thinking, if I just get this thing, if I just achieve this, then I'll be happy.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. Chasing that external validation, that sense of accomplishment.
So BECDS. It's basically all those initial feelings when we're chasing a goal.
Ah, okay. I'm starting to see the connection. So we're all fired up, raring to go, chasing after that ideal version of ourselves. But then what happens?
Well, just like summer follows spring, we move into the experience phase.
And that's where the real work begins, right?
Well, exactly. This is where we're putting in the effort. We're facing the challenges. It's not all sunshine and rainbows anymore.
So we're not just daydreaming about that promotion anymore. We're actually putting in the overtime, dealing with those demanding coworkers, and probably hitting a few roadblocks along the way.
And that's when those level 1 tendencies can really trip us up.
Because we're hit with obstacles, we face setbacks, and suddenly that perfect Jesse we were chasing, it's not really lining up the way we envisioned it.
Right. And that's when the doubt creeps in, the frustration, the urge to just give up.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. So what can we do? How do we navigate those inevitable bumps in the road without completely losing our way?
That's where levels 2 and 3 come in handy.
Okay, so instead of getting stuck in that cycle of chasing external validation, maybe it's about finding a different kind of fulfillment, one that isn't dependent on achieving a specific outcome.
Exactly. It's not about ignoring our own challenges, but maybe shifting our perspective a little bit, you know?
From me to we, maybe?
Exactly. Like instead of getting totally absorbed in your own struggles, what if you reached out to a colleague who's working on that same project and said, hey, this is tough. How are you holding up?
It's acknowledging that shared experience, that shared humanity.
Right. And in that simple act of reaching out, of offering support, we tap into a different kind of fulfillment,
Yeah.
one that isn't contingent on whether or not we get that promotion or achieve that goal.
So it's not about ignoring our own challenges, but about recognizing that we're not alone in experiencing them. And maybe, just maybe, by offering support, by practicing compassion, we not only help others, but we also create a sense of connection that can be incredibly healing for ourselves as well.
Now you're getting it. But I'm curious, have you ever noticed that even when we know this stuff intellectually, there's still a part of us that wants to cling to control, to force things to go a certain way?
Oh, absolutely. It's like this constant internal battle. My brain knows better, but there's this other part of me that just wants to overthink everything, to plan for every possible outcome, to stay in control.
The text calls that the expert mind.
Oh my gosh, yes. The expert mind. It's like this constant need to analyze every situation, come up with a plan, and try to control the outcome. But if constantly being the expert keeps us stuck at level 1, what's the alternative?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. The text suggests that instead of trying to be the expert, we can try cultivating the energy of the ideal parental figure within ourselves.
The ideal parental figure. Okay, paint me a picture. What does that even look like?
Imagine someone who's super calm, nurturing, always there to offer unconditional love and support no matter what, like the wisest, most compassionate parent you could imagine.
Okay, I can picture that. Someone who just radiates warmth and understanding, and who helps us see the good in ourselves even when we're struggling. So how do we actually tap into that energy within ourselves, especially when we're faced with challenges or feeling insecure?
It starts with awareness, you know, noticing when that inner critic, that voice of judgment and self-doubt starts to creep in.
Mm.
And instead of getting caught up in its narrative, we can choose to meet it with compassion.
So instead of berating ourselves for not having all the answers, for making mistakes, for not being perfect, we can offer ourselves kindness, patience, and reassurance. It's like we become a supportive friend to ourselves, a source of strength and encouragement.
Exactly. And the more we practice this, the more we cultivate that inner space of acceptance and compassion, the more naturally those qualities will flow outward, influencing our interactions with others. It creates this ripple effect of kindness and understanding. And that brings us to another fascinating concept from the text, the Cartman drama triangle.
Oh, yes. The victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor. Those roles we can get stuck in, both in our relationships with others and even within our own mind.
Exactly. And the text makes this fascinating connection between the drama triangle and internal family systems therapy, specifically the concept of the negative adaptive child, or NAC.
Okay, I'm all ears. Break that down for me. What's the NAC and how does it relate to those not so healthy roles we play?
So picture this. The NAC is that part of us that developed in childhood to help us navigate difficult emotions and situations. It's driven by fear and this deep desire for safety and security.
So it's like our inner child trying to protect us, even if those protection mechanisms are no longer serving us in adulthood.
Exactly. And here's the thing. When we're operating from that NAC place, we're more likely to get caught in the drama triangle. For example, if our NAC feels insecure or unworthy, we might unconsciously play the role of the victim, seeking validation and support from others. Or we might swing to the other extreme and become the rescuer, trying to fix everyone else's problems to avoid dealing with our own.
And then there's the persecutor, that inner critic that judges both ourselves and others, often masking a deep-seated fear of vulnerability.
Precisely. And what's fascinating is that all three roles, the victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor, they're all just different expressions of that same underlying fear. They're all ways of trying to protect ourselves, to avoid feeling those core wounds of unworthiness, rejection, or abandonment.
So how do we break free from this cycle? How do we move from that place of reactivity and fear to a place of greater peace and compassion, both for ourselves and for others? It's so easy to get caught in those loops, right? Like I can totally see myself playing out those roles in different areas of my life.
But we all do. It's part of being human.
So how do we actually break free? How do we move from that place of just reacting out of fear to a place where we can show up with more peace and compassion for ourselves and the people around us?
Well, the text says the first step is awareness, you know,
Yeah.
like noticing when we're caught in that drama triangle
Yeah.
and then trying to identify those underlying fears, those insecurities that are driving our behavior.
So like hitting the pause button on those automatic reactions and instead getting curious about what's really going on underneath the surface.
Exactly. Because once we bring awareness to those patterns, we can start to offer ourselves a little compassion, you know? Instead of judging those parts of ourselves, we can start to see them as just strategies we developed to cope with tough situations. Like maybe that inner critic was trying to protect us in some way.
So it's about recognizing those parts of ourselves with curiosity and compassion instead of judgment.
Yeah.
Like saying to ourselves, hey, I see you, you're hurting, and that's okay. I'm here for you.
Exactly. It's about showing up for ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a close friend or a loved one.
It's like that saying, right? Treat yourself like you would treat someone you love.
Right. And as we cultivate that inner compassion, as we learn to meet our own needs with more kindness and understanding, we naturally become more available to offer that same compassion to others.
It's like we're expanding our capacity for empathy and understanding. We begin to see that everyone is fighting their own battles, carrying their own wounds, and doing the best they can with what they have.
Beautifully said. And from that place of shared humanity, that recognition that we're all in this together, it becomes easier to let go of judgment, to offer forgiveness, both to ourselves and to others. And it's in that space of forgiveness, of radical acceptance, that we create the conditions for true healing and transformation, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
This has been such a rich and insightful conversation. It feels like we've just scratched the surface of these concepts, and I know I'll be contemplating them for weeks to come. But before we wrap up, is there anything else our listeners should be aware of as they begin to explore these ideas in their own lives?
You know, one thing that really stood out to me in the text is this idea that even the act of seeking happiness, of striving for those higher levels of well-being, can sometimes be a subtle form of clinging, of resisting the present moment as it is.
It's like we're so focused on getting somewhere else, becoming someone else, that we miss the beauty and the wisdom of the journey itself.
Exactly. The text reminds us that true happiness, that deep sense of peace and contentment, isn't something that can be grasped or sourced. It's an unfolding, a process of letting go of our preconceived notions of who we think we should be and what we think will make us happy, and instead, simply surrendering to the wisdom of the present moment.
It's about trusting that the path, even with all its twists and turns, is leading us exactly where we need to be.
Beautifully said. And by embracing the journey, by allowing ourselves to be fully present with all that arises, the joy and the sorrow, the ease, the difficulty, we create the conditions for true happiness to blossom from within.
That's a beautiful thought to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. It's been a truly enlightening conversation. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the nature of happiness and the power of prioritizing others. We hope this conversation has sparked some new insights and inspired you to explore these ideas further in your own lives. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.